Again, it's my view. There's no ground in terms of an earth ground or a process ground in grounded theory. And the theory, not that much theory, not that well worked out. Hi, I'm David Michael Boje, and today I'm going to ask a question. Would Alfred North Whitehead conclude there is no ground and no theory in grounded theory? And I'm going to say he probably would. So let's have a look at it. So 2 weeks ago, we covered several metaphysics, the metaphysics of progress, the metaphysics of presence, the metaphysics of dualities. You'll find out that in most of the approaches to grounded theory, these are very prevalent. Last week, we began our focus on process metaphysics of Alfred North Whitehead, so you can find that previous video on YouTube. This week, our focus is on grounded theory and what Whitehead calls superficial metaphysics. So my thesis is as follows. There are clearly definite metaphysical distinctions in 4 waves of grounded theory, be they about duality, presence, or progress. Each historical wave of grounded theory does not disprove the metaphysics of the prior waves, but they just ignore them. Each wave has its fallacy, and the first 3 have metaphysical superficiality. In the face of quantum theory, the basis I use for the 4th wave. Alfred North Whitehead. Let's ask in general, what is ground? What is grounded? What is theory? Ground, in general use, ground is at the bottom, the base, the lowest part of an argument. Ground for a conclusion. Foundation. The surface of the earth is ground, a place such as a hunting ground. For Whitehead, there is always background, and earth or body are connected to earth, including electric current, the quantum ground, the society of cells, as we talked about last week. So what is grounded? Can we expose grounded theory's metaphysical superficiality? Superficial to denote ground as concept, or as coding concepts as ground, or as a social construction, agreement as ground. In contrast to inquiry into the temporal actual processes of existence and their potentiality, Whitehead includes accidents, creativity, novelty in his process metaphysics, and extensive quantum process. He was in the time of the birth of quantum theory and quantum mechanics, and he knew his mathematics. The extensive quanta, the event, has its life history. What tends to happen in the first 3 waves of quantum theory is a wipeout of the history. Let's take a look. Theory of the organism, by topics of experience and sense inference, can objectify actual occurrence from process and reality. You can find that. Theory in general use, right? It's more about viewing and contemplation, speculative ideas, observed phenomena. So these are the key players here in the 4 waves of grounded theory. That last picture is me at an earlier age. But first you had Glasser and Strauss in 1967 produced their book on grounded theory. Then there was a kind of a divorce of Glasser and Strauss, and a new person took over. Corbin with Strauss, and completely moved on from what was the first wave to doing kind of positivism coding instead of induction. The 3rd wave, Clark, Shamas, Mills et al., they decided they would just move grounded theory into social constructivism. Now my approach is self-correcting ontology with Charles Saunders Peirce, and the metaphysics of process. You know who? Alfred North Whitehead. So the first wave players, Barney, Galland, Glaser, 1930 to 2022, he was a American sociologist and one of the founders of grounded theory. Grew up in Mill Valley, born in 1930, died in 2022. And his whole life he stayed with first wave. But Ansel Leonard Strauss, born 1916, right? Died 1996. He jumped ship into the second wave. Here's kind of an image of the four waves. First wave, grounded theory, had the inductive fallacy. By induction, we would look at a number of cases and make a generalization. There wasn't a lot of sampling involved. In fact, it was anti-empiricism. Second wave had a reaction. Strauss went with Corbin and started doing extensive codings and codings of codings and diaries of codings and try to get some surety about the codes. Third wave switched to social constructivism, and in the fourth wave that I've led is to do relational process ontologies. And a lot of people do relational process ontology, but today I'm focusing on Alfred North Whitehead. What is the first wave's inductive fallacy? Inductive fallacy is defined as making a few specific observations and then generalizing a conclusion that applies to the entire population. Barney Glasser and Anselm Strauss' alternative to vigorous quantitative verification is actually quantitative verification that uses sampling, coding, reliability, validity, frequency distributions, hypothesis formulation, conceptual formulation, presentation of evidence. So this is actually a complete reversal of this alternative of doing the quantitative. So doing the qualitative meant the medium of discovering theory is for the qualitative person to relax these rigorous rules of coding and sampling and validity and frequency that they objected to, both, right? Glasser in particular, and sort of forgo accuracy and verification to just build the theory. Now, what is the induction method? And here Whitehead talks about it. Basically, you get a bunch of cases or a few cases and you generalize. That's induction. In natural sciences, rigid methods is the Baconian method of induction, a method which is consistently pursued. What would have left science where it found it if it was consistently pursued? What Bacon omitted was the play of free imagination controlled by the requirements of coherence and logic. The true method of discovery is like the flight of the aeroplane. It starts from the ground, a particular observation. It makes a flight into the thin air of imaginative generalization, and again lands with renewed observation rendered acute by rational interpretation. That's from Process Reality, page 5. So the second wave, its positivism fallacy, kind of reverts to positivism as defined as claiming the objectivity and certainty of empirical scientific method. It tries to be scientism, reductionism, overgeneralizations, and doesn't face its own methodological limitations. Other ways of knowing, such as intuition, introspection, religious faith, are rejected or considered meaningless in positivism. So the second wave, Strauss and Corbin in their book 1994, right? They use open coding, analyzing data, such as seeing conceptual components emerge, theorizing, which partly includes pulling concepts together, thinking through how each concept can be related to larger, more inclusive general concept. Here's an illustration by Nguyen and Martin. The lowest level, coding, initial coding, open coding, large quantities of coding, then more focused coding, category development, then third, axial thematic coding emerges, saturated categories and themes. And then if indicated a level 4, theories can emerge from saturated categories and themes. Well, this is all very head-oriented. A critique of the second wave of coding positivism by my friend Pushkala Prasad asserts the more positivist set of ontological assumptions in grounded theory, believing in existence as much more concrete reality that grounds our research efforts. And that this grounding can be achieved by the coding and recoding and diary coding, etc., etc. What is the third wave of social constructivism fallacy? So they turned to the third wave, and again, they didn't really disprove the second wave or the first wave, they just turned to the third wave. Declared the self to be determined by social constructs. Doesn't sound too bad, but it denies the individual ability to transcend the group and seeks to erase the natural. History itself then becomes a construct, and its penetration and meaning is shaped by the theory. So history has no existential aspects. So it's a problem for me as a storytelling person. It's not seen as it is by itself a heap of facts, right? Which historians set to order to make it comprehensible. All right. So we can critique the third wave of social construction. Again, Pushkala Prasad, 2005, a wonderful book, right, on crafting research, working in the post-positivist traditions, it's called, asserts a move away from, instead of form, Berger and Luckman, who did that 1967 article on the social construction reality, where more objective and immediate facts undergo a reification, are treated as things. And last week we looked at misplaced concreteness that Alfred North Whitehead is critical about. Interpretivist approach to social construction kind of moved away from Berger and Luckman's dialectic and takes hold, and it's not really into the analysis of power that Berger and Luckman had, nor is it the hermeneutics of Heidegger, nor is it an in-depth ethnography, nor is it about broad context of social relations in history. It denies ontological existence of any material reality and focus instead on intersubjectivity, consciousness reifications as the analyst understands them. So it's kind of Edmund Husserl that we talked about last week on steroids. Now here we're looking at relational process ontology, and I want to focus on, again, Alfred North Whitehead and his approach and building the fourth wave. So if we looked at a fallacy of fourth wave grounded theory, it might be the historical fallacy, believing that certain results occurred only because a specific process or a nexus of process was performed. Through said process may be unrelated to results. So not everything is process is the critique, but yeah, I can live with it. The groundedness of order of actual world, right? When we look at Alfred North Whitehead's 4 aspects of groundedness, you start with the groundedness of the actual world, differentiated from mere giveness and introduction of adaptation or attainment of an end. Second, this end is concerned with the gradations of an intensity. We're more intense about an end. The heightening of intensity arises from order such that the multiplicity of components of the society of relations, the nexus, can enter explicit feeling as contrasts and are not in negative prehensions. Prehensions were kind of an erasure of the alternatives or the contrast. That intensity in the formal constitution of subject superjet involves appartition. It is objective functioning of the superjet. So what is a superjet? An individual or an actual entity that progressively emerges through feelings and the attainment of satisfaction for the philosophy of the organism. A subject emerges from the world of the superjet, not vice versa. right? So that's Whitehead. Now, Whitehead's focus is on context. It's on what he calls background. The appearance in consciousness is in reality lies dimly in the background, with its details hardly to be distinguished in consciousness. This is why if you just do the first wave, you may not be going deep enough in your ethnography to get an understanding of what's going on. If you switch to coding of the coding of the coding, in the second wave, you've moved out of the details too quickly. And no society is in isolation. Each society requires a social background, but that's just not the same as saying it's socially constructed. Background is in layers, and we have widening of background and context as it applies. So let's look a little more at ground and background. Thus, an originality in the temporal world is conditioned, though not determined by an initial subjective aim supplied by the ground of all order, of all originality. Thus, vagueness is an essential condition for the narrowness, which is one condition for the depth of relevance. So that really differentiates from first, second, third wave. Let's continue. It enables a background to contribute its relevant quota, and it enables social group in the foreground to gain concentrated relevance for its community of character. The right chaos and the right vagueness are jointly required for any effective harmony. So it's about context, foreground, and background. The layers of background are their layers. On process and reality, Whitehead says there is first the relevant background, providing a massive systematic uniformity. This background is the presupposed world to which all ordinary propositions refer. Secondly, there is the more remote, chaotic background, which has merely an irrelevant triviality so far as concerns direct objectification in the actual entity in question. This background represents those entities in the actual world with such perspective remoteness that there is even a chaos of diverse cosmic epochs. So Whitehead was a cosmologist, metaphysics, going beyond toward the mechanistic order of physics and promoting organism, process, evolution. I want to thank you for you tuning in. Appreciated it. If you want to come in person, go to unthinkment.com. We meet each Tuesday on Zoom, 1 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll be going through this presentation and getting Q&A, and we'll stop to sort of explore things, get questions and comments, or you can send me questions and comments to davidboje@gmail.com. All right? So come and visit us, right, at unthinkment.com. It's been my pleasure to give this presentation about grounded theory. I've talked about it before, and in the book Conversational Storytelling Interviews with Grace Ann Roselle, sort of a Charles Saunders Peirce look at process ontology. This is Glasser and Strauss's first book on the discovery of grounded theory. Here's a book where I talk about the 4 waves of grounded theory: storytelling, organizational practices, managing in the quantum age. And this fine book, Storytelling in the Global Age, There is No Planet B, by World Scientific Press. It suffers from a lot of fallacies. So again, thanks for joining us today. And all the best to you, all right?